You will receive your cart in a semi-dismantled condition. You will be required to fit on things like the engine onto the chassis, assembly of the steering wheel, assembly of the front panel or the nacelle panel, which is in front of the steering wheel, assembly of the chain onto the sprocket, both sprockets. You will also be required to fill in air in your tires. You will be required to do a complete check to make sure that everything has been fitted properly and tightened properly. You need to refer to your owner's manual or service manual which has been sent to you by email. The first thing that you will do now when you receive your cart is you will unpack it, of course. You will find that there are certain things which have been tied down to the chassis which have to be opened up and fitted. It's all very simple and very straightforward. Follow this video and see from the examples cited in this video how to mount all these things together and how to assemble these things. With carts that have a roll hoop, the first thing that you would have to fit on is the roll hoop, like in this case. It has been shown how the mounts go into each other and assemble into each other. You need to put on the fasteners as shown in this video. It's important to get your alignments right while assembling the parts so that you do not struggle with the assembly. Follow the sequence to ensure that your assembly is easy. All the fasteners are all provided either on the chassis or on the part that is being fitted to the chassis, so there is no chance of any errors or using the wrong fasteners in the wrong places. This is how we pack the engine. The engines do not come fitted to the cart. Engines are packed separately in their own box. This engine over here has got reduction gearbox and wet clutch assembly, which is already pre-assembled onto the engine. All you need to do is fill in oil in the engine and into the gearbox before you run the cart. You will also find the original manual from Honda. Each engine has its own manual, so please collect all the manuals. In the box you will also have the lower mounts for the engine, the chain, 2 bolts for the lower mounts, a chain lock, and a cable lock which is already fitted to the cable, which we will come to a little later. Notice how the engine mount has been fitted. It can be fitted in 2 ways. For this particular cart, it's to be fitted the way it's shown in the video. If you fit it the other way, then there will be a possibility that the engine will interfere with the mounts on the cart chassis or the seat mounts, or even touch the tire. In this case, for this cart, the Trailblazer, the engine mounts are to be fitted like this, in this direction. You take the lower mounts with the bolts and fit them from the underside of the mount. While threading these bolts in, do not tighten them completely, because you do need to adjust the engine either forward or backward depending on the chain. So just screw in the bolt just enough so that there's no excess play, and then we'll go on to the chain, fit the chain on, align the sprockets, and come back to the tightening sequence, which we'll come to later for the tightening of the bolts. Now here we are aligning the sprocket to the sprocket on the engine. This is very important. You need to use a steel rule or some straight edge to make sure that both your sprockets are perfectly aligned. Once that is done, tighten up the bolts to the torque specifications that are mentioned in the manual. Ensure that all these bolts are always tight. If there's a misalignment, you have a chance of the chain falling off the sprocket or premature wear and tear of the chain. String the chain onto the sprockets like you can see over here. Assembly of the chain lock is very important. There is a particular way that it's done. As you can see in this video, this is what the chain lock looks like. You put it through, put the other plate on like it's been shown, and fitting on the chain lock itself, the little snap lock, this needs to go on in the direction that you can see, because the open end of the snap lock should face the back side of the chain, or in the sense of the back side of the cart. The closed side should be the side that is in the direction of the chain rotating. This is also explained to you in the manual. Once the chain is fitted on, now is the time to adjust the adjuster bolt. Let it reach up to the engine. Tighten up the bolts a little bit more so that whatever play that there is between the engine and the frame is taken away. And then adjust the adjuster bolt just enough to make sure that the chain is got the right tension. Do not over tighten your chain. You might find that after the whole thing is done, you might find that once you've tightened up everything, the chain gets a little excessively tight. In that case, you need to repeat the process of loosening the under bolts, the underside engine mounts, and taking the adjuster bolt back in. Take the engine further back so that the chain gets a little bit more loose, and then follow these steps which you can see in the video. Always ensure that the lock nut for the adjuster bolt is tightened. Do not leave this loose. Now coming to the accelerator cable. Once your engine is all mounted and everything is done at the back, your next job is to connect up the accelerator cable to the accelerator pedal. This is a very simple process. Loop the cable through the cable tie that's been provided on the engine. Then you loop the cable through, you route it through through this little sleeve that's on the chassis, so that the cable is always secure and doesn't float around and move around. And now you thread the cable inner through the adjuster. That's the adjuster bolt over there. Pull it through. Next thing you need to do is take the cable lock and slide the cable, push the cable through the cable lock as shown over here. Loop the cable through preferably the middle position on the accelerator pedal, or on the higher one or the lower one for more or less sensitivity depending on what you want. And tighten it by looping it back into the cable lock round the pedal. This makes it secure. It also prevents any single point loading and vibrations and stuff like that from cutting into the accelerator cable by it being looped round the pedal. Next we come to the point where you need to fill in oil into the engine. That little flyer thing that's that comes attached to the engine indicates that there's no oil in the engine. This is where you fill in the oil from. The engine takes 600 ml of oil and the gearbox takes 400 ml of oil. So both of them together is exactly 1 liter. You should try and use a funnel like this, and you should also use a measuring jar to measure the exact quantity of oil that goes in. Again, you can refer to the owner's manual for the engine. Now we're coming to the gearbox. Same thing over here. You use the same setup and you fill in 400 ml of oil into the gearbox. The oil grade is 10W30. Finally, this is the shroud, the axle shroud as we call it, which covers up the rear axle and covers up all the moving parts for the driver's safety. So this is the last bit of assembly that needs to be done on the cart. The shroud fits into the little pivot points which are provided on the chassis, and there's a locking device on the front of the shroud which you can see over here. Make sure it's all secure before you start driving the cart. You need to check your tire pressures, you need to check your chain tension, you need to check lubrication, you need to check oil levels before each time you drive your cart. Please ensure that you drive your cart in a safe environment without other people around. Watch out for people, watch out for animals. Wear a helmet. Carts which have got roll hoops also have seat belts, so please ensure you have your seat belt on at all times. The car is not meant to be driven on public roads, it's only meant to be driven in a private property. Enjoy your KnK cart, all the best, and do come back to us if you need any help and any assistance.